Alright, so I'm an autistic person. I don't have any degrees, but I am changing myself slowly. Part of it's from understanding what I've done research into the brain with abnormalities, and part of it's through a lot of experience, figuring out what works, what doesn't, and understanding kind of what causes the brain to change. Like I said, I don't have a degree, so I don't actually like it if someone with a degree were to check this video and try to check some ideas. But I don't know. I wouldn't say theories because they're not tested and have a lot of evidence behind them. They're more of hypotheses, technically. But basically, it's been shown through brain scans people that are autistic have what are known as brain abnormalities. They have basically certain structures which are smaller and certain structures which are larger in the brain than people that have, say, that are neurotypical. Two in particular I want to talk about are the corpus callosum, which is right in the middle of the brain. This part of the brain will basically, it's a structure in the brain. It allows the two hemispheres of the brain to communicate. So basically, logic and emotion are able to be, how should I put it, used at the same time. An example is between men and women, even neurotypical. Women actually have a larger corpus callosum. That's why a lot of times when women are upset, they can still think logically, whereas men, when they're upset, they can't think as logically. And it's because the corpus callosum is larger in women. So it's like that with autistic people, except for the corpus callosum is a little bit smaller. Another abnormality is the amygdala is a little bit larger in autistic people, and the amygdala is like the fear center of basically the brain. It's the fight or flight. It causes the fight or flight response somewhat. It's basically causes stress. It causes alertness, that kind of thing. So, what I wanted to talk about is how people that are autistic are so hesitant to change. It's not so much hesitant as it's so resistant to change our brains, and it could be a number of things. And it could be actually a combination of things. It may not be just one in particular factor. It could be multiple factors. For one thing, you know, it's maybe our brains are so different than some of this neurotypical to do the same things as a neurotypical person. We would have to change our brains more drastically. It's like for a neurotypical person to do such and such task, it's more their brain is more easily. It's easier for their brain to change in order to do that task because their brain, through the society, has basically adapted to having that task done. As their brain is closer to being able to do that task, whereas someone that is autistic, our brain may be so different in neural connections that we just have farther to go. Another thing could be that change causes stress. Any change will cause stress, and when you're autistic, and even if you're not autistic, it causes a little stress, and that will release a hormone, the stress hormone called cortisol. And cortisol actually inhibits brain growth, both the creation of new neurons and neural connections. So that's when stress occurs. And when you're autistic, you have a higher amygdala, a greater amygdala, and usually if a structure is larger, it's more active. So what ends up happening is the autistic person has more stress. So it could be not only does the autistic person have farther to go, but the higher level of cortisol causes the change to be even more difficult because there's a hormone inhibiting the change. So that might be a factor too. But something that's helped me to change a lot, and I think would help a lot of people change as far as autistic people. And if you understand this, it might help. Is the autistic brain and the neurotypical brain have something in common, and that it can adapt. Now, the autistic brain, because of stress or say because of how far it has to change, it may take longer, but honestly, it can still adapt because the human brain, we humans wouldn't be able to survive if we weren't able to adapt. You know, the brain controls every function, every skill, and without the ability to adapt, we just wouldn't be able to survive as a species. You know, we wouldn't be able to, like, if we got stranded in a desert island, we wouldn't be able to go from living in a city, like I live in the city. We wouldn't be able to go from living in a city to living in on a deserted island. We wouldn't be able to do that unless we were able to adapt. Or another example is if I lived in a small town, which an example was in my state. There's actually a little what's called a census designated area, which is basically something that's so small it's not even a town, called Mexico, Indiana. If I were to live there and then move to a bigger city like, say, Indianapolis, or, God forbid, a huge city like Los Angeles, I would need entirely different skills to survive. I'd have to look out for new dangers. I'd have to be aware of dangers that weren't present in Mexico. I would have to just completely change my way of life, and if I couldn't, I wouldn't be able to survive. It's just like that. So we, as a species, are made to adapt. Now, the way we adapt is there are two basic components. There are two. How should I put? There are two basic tissues in the brain which control a lot of thinking in the brain, kind of. As far as processing in the brain, if you think of a computer, the processing, you've got gray matter and white matter. From what I understand, gray matter does the work, and white matter will basically transmit. It will carry the information around. And gray matter, I'm not sure if it's found at this point if it can, if you can increase the amount or not that much. But actually, most intelligence and most ability to do things actually comes from the white matter, and that can be increased. The way you increase white matter is by doing things over and over and over again. And if you stop doing them, actually that white matter goes away, because the body, as part of adapting, we don't like this, but it's actually necessary for survival. The body doesn't like to spend calories, in other words, calories, nutrients, whatnot, on something it doesn't need because of famine and whatnot. It wants to run as efficiently as possible. That's why if you stop working out, your muscles go away, because muscles take energy to maintain. They do. So your body's like, you're not using the muscles anymore, let's get rid of them because they're costing calories. Because your body wants to be able to store calories so that if there's a famine, it can survive. It's just the way it is. So you have to keep using those skills, or else you don't use it, you lose it. That's basically what's going on, is the neural connections become weaker. So what you have to do is just understand that the neural connections are going to take time, and you just have to keep going until they develop. It takes time, and you got to take a lot of work, but even if you're autistic, you can do it. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if it's as far as why it takes so long. If it's because we have so far to go, because the brain is so different, because of the neural connections. I don't know if it's because of our stress levels being so high. I don't know if it's because it's just a combination of those. It could even also be because of the corpus callosum being smaller. The connections are not as strong in the corpus callosum, causing it so that the hemispheres aren't communicating very well. So we're actually we have to do more at one time than we would than the we are having trouble doing more at one time than the neurotypical person does. So that's causing even more stress. That's causing it even putting even more power just to function instead of growing and developing in the brain. But you have to understand, we can develop. It's just we have to really try hard, and we have to look into it from, how did I put it, from a sort of medical, from a biological, from anatomy and from an anatomical, physiological standpoint, from that viewpoint. Just understand that it takes longer, but we can adapt, and we have to keep trying, and it's going to take a long time, but we can adapt quite a bit. It's our brains were made to adapt. An autistic brain and a neurotypical brain can both adapt. Now, the autistic brain may take longer to adapt, but it can, and it's just a life lesson that we have to accept. There's life lessons I'm learning right now through this transformation I'm doing. Life lessons of I've learned I can't do more than one thing at once, and I'll do another video of that. But I can only do so much at once, and maybe in the future I can do more at once than I can now. But I have to accept that. I want to learn a lot of languages. I want to help people, but I have to help myself first, and I don't like that, but I have to accept that. There are truths to life. There are life truths. There are life lessons that I don't like, that we don't like, that no one likes. But we just have to accept them because that's just the way things are. And I'll do another video where I talk about what I'm doing to, accept what I can do, what I can't do at the moment. But yeah, it's just there are life lessons that we like, we don't like. It's just the way things are, and just gotta accept them. But yeah, we can change. It's just we have to actually put the effort in, and we have to understand what's going on with us. Do we want to add more stress to the brain? Do we want to take some stress away? Do we want to take breaks? Do we want to, have a little bit of stress? Do we want to, take stress relieving exercises to bring the cortisol down? Do we have to change the diet up to lower the stress? Do we have to add a nutrient like B vitamin for energy? I take some B vitamin pills partly because I have PTSD, and that seems to help. But stuff like this, you have to really figure out what works for you. It's a lot of experimenting. I've been trying to change myself for a little over a year, and I've come a long way. But as far as just adapting to the world, that's been 12 years, serious work. 12 years, and I've come a long way in those 12 years. But yeah, our brains were made to adapt, and we've got to remember that. And it's the main thing is just keep going and make a habit out of it and make a desire to change. And you just gotta keep adapting. You just gotta keep figuring out what's going on and what you want to do, and keep working at it. And what works for you may not work for me, it may not work for anyone else. You have to figure out what works for you. I wish I could just tell you this works for you, but I can't. You're just gonna have to figure that out for yourself. I can give you ideas, I can give you guidance, I can tell you what works for me, but you're just going to have to keep doing something until something clicks. Like with me picking up, keeping my apartment clean, what's working right now is I would just do a little bit at a time. I had to keep asking for help. I've had over a year of staff coming in and helping me clean. It's called hand over hand, cleaning along with me, teaching me to clean. I've had to have my parents come over and help me clean, just to get in the habit of getting it cleaned up from time to time. And it's finally gotten to the point where it's kind of like I'm snapping. It's just I've gotten to the point where I look around and I've actually noticed that the place is dirty, just because I'm always cleaning it. And it got to the point where it's irritating. It's like, I've done all this work and this is what it looks like. So I've learned I just have to keep a little bit of irritation, I have to keep a little bit of stress. And that's what's making it work now. So, and that took over a year. That took I mean, I've been living on my own since I was like 23, so that if you think about it that way, it took 7 years of being in a mess to get to this point. So it's actually, and then if you want to talk about how long it took to actually get this point from, you know, since I've had trouble keeping my living area clean, you're talking 30 years. So it's taken a long time. 30 years, 3 decades of living in a mess before I started getting to the point where, mess bothers me. It can take a long time to change, but you can change, and you're going to have to want to change, and you just have to understand it can take a long time, and you just want to change, and that's the thing. You have to want to change. You may have to get help. I had to get help, so yeah. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you watched to the end, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that you can share this with someone who has access to equipment that can do things like test cortisol levels, or has the resources to do maybe brain scans, or has the resources to check, to experiment, and study autistic people that are changing. And I'd really like to just share these ideas in order to help people that are autistic, and maybe even just people who aren't autistic but who also have other disabilities, and maybe people that don't even have a disability but have trouble changing their ways. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day.